Every standard you lower is a silent contract with mediocrity, and every boundary you fail to enforce is a message to the world that your peace is negotiable. You become what you tolerate. If you've ever wondered why certain patterns keep repeating in your life, this video will give you the clarity to break them for good. Stay until the end, and don't forget to subscribe, because on this channel, we don't just talk about change, we become it. Today, we are exploring a simple yet profound truth that governs the quality of our lives. You become what you tolerate. This isn't about blame or regret. It's a powerful diagnostic tool. The conditions you accept in your relationships, your career, your health, and your environment are a direct reflection of the standards you hold for yourself. This video is for you, especially if you've ever felt stuck or wondered why things aren't changing. This concept is universally relevant because it operates beneath the surface of our conscious decisions. We often focus on big goals and grand ambitions, yet we overlook the small daily compromises that slowly erode our potential. These subtle tolerations, the minor disrespect, the chronic disorganization, the persistent negative self-talk, collectively define the boundaries of our reality. Understanding this principle is the first step toward intentionally designing a life you genuinely respect and enjoy. Throughout this video, we will dissect this idea together. We will explore the psychological reasons why we tolerate things that don't serve us, identify the hidden costs of inaction, and most importantly, outline a practical framework for raising our standards. We won't be dealing with empty platitudes or quick fixes, but with a foundational understanding that can lead to meaningful and sustainable personal growth. My perspective comes from years of studying personal development, psychology, and philosophy, not as a guru, but as a fellow traveler on this path. The insights shared here are a synthesis of established psychological principles and timeless wisdom, framed to be accessible and applicable to your own unique journey. The goal is to provide you with clarity and tools, not to prescribe a one-size-fits-all solution for your life. Before we can effectively change what we accept from the world around us, we must first look inward. We need to understand the powerful, often invisible forces that make us settle for less than we deserve. The act of tolerating is not a passive state, it's an active, albeit subconscious, choice. To understand it, we must first explore the deep-seated psychological mechanisms that drive our acceptance. The human brain is wired for survival, and a key survival mechanism is the conservation of energy. This often translates into a preference for familiarity, even if that familiarity is uncomfortable or detrimental. This is the bedrock of why we tolerate things. Concepts like learned helplessness show that when we repeatedly face a negative situation we can't control, we might eventually stop trying to change it, even when opportunities arise. This tendency is reinforced by what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort experienced when holding conflicting beliefs or values. To reduce this discomfort, it's often easier to change our belief about a situation, "It's not that bad," than to summon the energy to change the situation itself. We rationalize, we minimize, and we justify, all in an effort to maintain a state of internal consistency and comfort. From an evolutionary standpoint, there was once a clear advantage to sticking with the known devil over the unknown angel. The familiar, even if suboptimal, was at least predictable and survivable. This ancient wiring can still influence our modern lives, making us hesitate to leave the draining job, the unfulfilling relationship, or the comfortable habit. The fear of the unknown often outweighs the pain of the known, creating a powerful inertia. Think of your tolerance level as a thermostat. It's set to a specific temperature, your comfort zone. If life gets too stressful or chaotic, too hot, you take action to cool it down. But if things are just mediocre or slightly negative, a bit cold, it might not be uncomfortable enough to trigger the system. Your subconscious works to keep you at this preset temperature, the one you've become accustomed to. This internal thermostat, however, isn't set at random. It's calibrated over years, shaped by the standards we observed and the experiences we had, especially in our formative years. The beliefs we formed about what is normal, acceptable, or even possible were not created in a vacuum. They are echoes of our past, silently dictating the terms of our present and future. Our personal standards, the very foundation of what we tolerate, are largely constructed during our childhood and adolescence. They are the blueprints handed to us by our family, our community, and our early life experiences. We learn what is acceptable in a relationship by watching our parents. We learn our value in the workplace based on how our early efforts were acknowledged or dismissed. These lessons form our initial default settings. Consider these concrete examples. A person who grew up in a chaotic household might develop a high tolerance for clutter and disorganization as an adult, because that environment feels normal. Someone who was consistently told their feelings were an overreaction might learn to tolerate emotional neglect from partners and friends. These patterns are not character flaws. They are deeply ingrained, learned responses to our environment. Of course, this initial blueprint is not set in stone. As we grow, our peer groups, education, and cultural environment can challenge or reinforce these early standards. A supportive group of friends can raise our expectations for how we should be treated. Conversely, a highly critical work environment can lower them, teaching us to tolerate constant pressure and a lack of appreciation. Our standards are dynamic, shaped by the inputs we continuously receive. It is crucial to approach this understanding without blame. The purpose of looking at the origins of our standards is not to hold our past hostage, but to recognize its influence. It's about gaining the awareness necessary to consciously evaluate these inherited beliefs and decide if they still serve us today. You are not a prisoner of your history. You are the architect of your future, and awareness is your primary tool. Understanding where our standards came from provides the why behind our current tolerations. It gives us context for our patterns. With this knowledge, we can move from abstract awareness to concrete action. The next logical step is to turn our attention from the past to the present and begin the practical work of identifying exactly what we are tolerating in our lives right now. The first step toward change is honest assessment. This involves conducting a toleration audit, a conscious, deliberate inventory of every single thing, big or small, that drains your energy, causes you frustration, or makes you feel less than you are. This requires radical honesty and a commitment to seeing your life as it truly is, not as you wish it were. Grab a notebook and be brutally truthful with yourself. What might this look like in practice? It could be the friend who consistently makes backhanded compliments. It might be the pile of paperwork you avoid every day. It could be the feeling of exhaustion from saying yes to commitments you don't have the energy for. Or it could be the internal critic that tells you you're not good enough. List everything, without judgment or immediate plans to fix it. There are various ways to approach this audit to suit your personal style. You might prefer quiet journaling, where you can freely explore your thoughts without interruption. Others may benefit from a guided meditation focused on scanning different areas of life: career, relationships, health, environment. For some, a frank and open conversation with a trusted, non-judgmental friend can reveal blind spots we couldn't see on our own. Be prepared for this process to feel uncomfortable. The purpose of a toleration audit is to bring to light the things we have actively or passively chosen to ignore. It is an act of turning on the lights in a room we've kept dark for a long time. The initial sight might be disheartening, but remember that you cannot change what you do not first acknowledge. Once you have this list, you may feel a sense of being overwhelmed. That's a natural reaction. But this list is not your life sentence. It is your map. It shows you exactly where your energy is leaking. The key is not to try and fix everything at once, but to first understand the cumulative and profound cost of letting these things continue unchecked. The things we tolerate rarely exist in isolation. They have a compounding effect, much like interest on a debt. Each small annoyance, each accepted compromise, each ignored boundary violation acts as a small withdrawal from your account of energy, confidence, and self-respect. Over time, these small withdrawals can lead to a state of emotional and mental bankruptcy. What starts as a minor leak can eventually sink the entire ship. Let's trace the path of this compounding cost. Tolerating a consistently messy kitchen doesn't just create a visually unappealing space. It subtly communicates to your subconscious that you don't deserve an environment of order and peace. Tolerating a friend's chronic lateness is not just about a few wasted minutes. It reinforces the belief that your time is not valuable. These small acts of acceptance shape your self-concept. The price we pay is not limited to our emotional well-being. This constant low-grade stress can manifest physically. contributing to fatigue, weakened immune response, and other health issues. Financially, tolerating a job that underpays you or a habit of disorganized finances has obvious, tangible costs. It also impacts our potential by consuming mental bandwidth that could be used for growth, creativity, and pursuing opportunities. The intention here is not to create fear or anxiety, but to foster a realistic understanding of the stakes. The phrase, "you become what you tolerate," is not just a motivational quote. It is a description of a real-world mechanism. Passivity is not a neutral state. It is an active choice to allow negative forces to shape your reality by default, and that choice has significant long-term consequences. Recognizing this heavy cost can feel paralyzing. It can seem like an insurmountable debt has been accumulated. However, the path forward isn't a single massive payment. The way to reverse this compound interest is to start making small, strategic deposits of self-respect. It begins with the decision to raise the bar, even just a tiny bit in one specific area of your life. The antidote to a life of toleration is the conscious act of setting a new, higher standard for yourself. This doesn't require a complete life overhaul overnight. The most effective strategy is to choose one area from your toleration audit and define a new, non-negotiable minimum. This becomes your new baseline, the line you will no longer cross. It's a declaration of what you now stand for. For example, if you've been tolerating a lack of personal time, your new standard might be, "I dedicate 30 minutes each day to an activity purely for my own well-being, without guilt." If you've tolerated financial stress, your new standard could be, "I look at my bank account every single day to maintain awareness." The key is to make it a clear, simple, and actionable statement. This new standard can be adapted to any area of your life. It could be a behavioral standard like, "I no longer participate in gossip." It could be an emotional standard such as, "I allow myself to feel my emotions without judgment." Or it might be an environmental standard, "I will not go to sleep with a messy kitchen." Start with the one that feels most empowering or the least intimidating. You must anticipate internal resistance. Your brain, accustomed to the old way, will create friction. It will offer excuses, justifications, and temptations to revert to the familiar comfort of the old, lower standard. This is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that the rewiring process has begun. Acknowledging this resistance without giving into it is a critical part of the journey toward lasting change. Once you have clearly defined this new standard for yourself, the next step is to translate this internal decision into an external reality. This involves communicating your new expectations, not necessarily with grand announcements, but often through subtle shifts in your language and behavior. The world needs to be informed that the old rules of engagement with you have officially changed for the better. Communicating a new standard is the art of setting a boundary. This is often the most feared step, but it doesn't have to be confrontational. Effective boundary communication is clear, calm, respectful, and firm. It focuses on your needs and actions, not on blaming or controlling others. It's a statement of what you will do, not a demand of what they must do. Consider the difference in these statements. Instead of an accusatory, "You always interrupt me," try a boundary-setting statement like, "I would like to finish my thought." If a friend makes a joke at your expense instead of silent resentment, you can say calmly, "I don't find that funny." The focus is on your reality and your limits, which are not up for debate. The method of communication will naturally vary with the situation. With a professional colleague, a boundary might be set by simply saying, "I'm not available to discuss work after 6 p.m. In a close relationship, it might be a more vulnerable conversation. Sometimes, the most powerful communication is nonverbal. It's the act of simply leaving a situation or not responding to a message that disrespects your time. You must be prepared for the possibility of pushback. People who benefited from your old lower standards may not like the new ones. They might test your resolve, act surprised, or even try to guilt you into reverting to your old ways. This is a crucial test. Their reaction is their responsibility. Your responsibility is to calmly and consistently hold your new boundary. Setting the boundary with your words is the initial act, but a boundary is only as strong as its reinforcement. Words alone are not enough to rewire years of learned tolerance. The real transformation happens when your words are consistently backed up by your actions, proving to yourself and to the world that your new standard is not just a suggestion, but your new reality. A boundary declared but not defended is merely a suggestion. The true power in raising your standards lies in consistency. Every action you take is a vote for the person you want to become. When you consistently uphold your new standard, you are not just changing a behavior. You are fundamentally reshaping your identity and reprogramming the expectations of those around you. This is where you truly become what you tolerate. Let's look at this in practice. If your new standard is, I treat my body with respect, your consistent actions are choosing nutritious food, moving your body, and getting adequate sleep. If your standard is, my home is my sanctuary, your consistent action is the daily ritual of tidying up, even when you don't feel like it. Each small, consistent action builds evidence for your new belief system. Consistency should not be confused with perfection. You will have days where you slip up, where you fall back into an old pattern. The goal is not an unbroken streak of flawless behavior. The real measure of consistency is how quickly you return to your standard after a mistake. It is the act of forgiving yourself and immediately recommitting that builds resilience and strengthens your resolve over the long term. This process requires a significant investment of conscious effort and energy, particularly at the start. It is a marathon, not a sprint. This is why starting with just one or two key standards is so important. Trying to change everything at once is a recipe for burnout and failure. Celebrate small victories and be patient with yourself as you build this new muscle of self-respect and discipline. As you continue to practice this consistency, a subtle but powerful shift begins to occur. Your new standard stops feeling like a chore and starts to become your new normal. Beyond your own internal changes, you'll notice that the world around you begins to respond differently. You begin to attract people and opportunities that are in alignment with the higher standards you now hold for yourself. This isn't about some mystical cosmic ordering system. The law of attraction, in this context, is a practical, psychological, and social phenomenon. When you raise your standards and consistently act in accordance with them, you fundamentally change the signals you send out to the world. Your behavior, your choices, and your energy shift. And as a result, you naturally attract different experiences and people into your life. Think of it this way. A person who no longer tolerates negativity will naturally spend less time with cynical people and stop engaging in complaining. This creates a vacuum that is then filled by more optimistic and constructive individuals who are drawn to that new energy. Someone who decides to no longer tolerate financial instability starts making different choices, seeking out knowledge and communities that support wealth creation. This is the ultimate expression of the principle, you become what you tolerate. By refusing to tolerate mediocrity, you become excellent. By refusing to tolerate disrespect, you become respected. Your external world slowly but surely begins to morph into a mirror image of your internal standards. You are not chasing a better life. You are creating the conditions for a better life to come to you. An effective analogy is tuning a radio. Your personal standards are the frequency you are broadcasting on. If you're tuned to a frequency of self-doubt and compromise, you will receive a signal filled with static, unfulfilling jobs, draining relationships, and constant frustration. By consciously changing your frequency to one of self-respect and purpose, you start to pick up a much clearer, stronger, and more harmonious station. This entire process, from understanding the psychology to taking consistent action, culminates in this transformative shift. It is a journey from being a passive recipient of life's circumstances to becoming an active architect of your reality. Now let's bring all these concepts together into a clear, actionable plan that you can begin to implement in your own life, starting today. Let's consolidate this entire journey into a simple, practical action plan. First, perform your honest toleration audit. Second, choose just one area to focus on initially, the one that will give you the most significant return on your energy. Third, define your new non-negotiable minimum standard for that area in a clear, positive statement. Finally, communicate and enforce that standard through consistent daily action. To support you on this path, Consider seeking out legitimate resources that can deepen your understanding. Books like Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover, Tawwab offer excellent practical advice on the language of boundaries. Journaling prompts, which you can easily find online, can also be a powerful tool for self-reflection during your audit and for tracking your progress as you implement these changes. It is vital to be realistic about the results and the timeline. This is not about achieving a perfect, problem-free life. It's about building a life lived with greater intention, integrity, and self-respect. Some changes will be rapid, while others will take months or even years of consistent effort. The true victory is not the destination, but the daily act of choosing to honor yourself and your standards. As a first step in this journey, I invite you to share in the comments one thing you will no longer tolerate. This is not for public validation, but for you. The act of writing it down and putting it out into the world is a powerful declaration of intent. It is your first concrete action in moving from passive acceptance to conscious creation, and it can inspire others to do the same. In the end, you are the sole gatekeeper of your mind, your time, and your energy. Every day, with every choice, you are teaching the world how to treat you by what you accept and what you reject. You will always, inevitably, become what you tolerate. So make the conscious choice to tolerate excellence, to demand respect, and to cultivate peace. Become the person you were meant to be by design, not by default. You've spent years adapting to what you thought you had to accept. But from this moment on, that ends. Start by choosing just one thing you'll no longer tolerate, and make it your declaration of self-respect. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to raise their standards too. And remember, the shift isn't coming. You are the shift.